Good evening. It's Thursday, the 14th of August, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Diplomacy update. Trump holds virtual summit with Zelenskyy, discusses Ukraine's security ahead of Putin meeting. Maritime tragedy. Migrant boat capsizes near Lampedusa, at least 26 dead as rescue operations continue. Unusual carrier. Retired police dog takes up beekeeping, uses keen nose to detect honeybee disease.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prithika Sivakumar.
Good evening once again. Ahead of his summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, President Donald Trump participated in a virtual meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders. The discussions focused on Ukraine's sovereignty and security, with European leaders urging Trump to ensure Ukraine's inclusion in any peace negotiations.
President Trump took part in a virtual call this morning with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, as well as the leaders of Germany, France, Italy, and the UK. For the Europeans, it was their last chance to make their voices heard before Trump goes to Alaska to meet one-on-one with Putin this Friday. And during an event at the Kennedy Center, President Trump told reporters about the call and his message for Putin ahead of their summit.
We had a very good call. He was on the call. President Zelenskyy was on the call. I would rate it a 10, very, very friendly.
Will Russia face any consequences if Vladimir Putin does not agree to stop the war after your meeting on Friday?
Yes, they will. Yeah.
What will the consequences
There will be
be?
consequences.
Sanctions, tariffs?
There will be, I don't have to say, there will be very severe consequences.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has warned that Washington may increase secondary tariffs on India if President Donald Trump's upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska fails to yield progress on Ukraine. India currently faces a 50% tariff on its exports to the U.S., including a 25% penalty for purchasing Russian oil.
The Trump administration's imposition of a 50% tariff on Indian goods has significantly strained U.S.-India relations. This move was primarily in response to India's continued imports of discounted Russian oil, which the U.S. views as undermining sanctions against Russia. Treasury Secretary Bessent's remarks indicate that the U.S. is prepared to escalate these measures further if diplomatic efforts with Russia do not progress. India has defended its purchase of Russian oil, citing the need to secure affordable energy supplies for its growing population. The Indian government has labeled the U.S. tariffs as unfair and unjustified, emphasizing its strategic autonomy and foreign policy decisions. Domestically, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pledged to protect India's farmers and dairy producers, sectors that are particularly sensitive to trade disruptions. Potential for increased tariffs on India underscores the Trump administration's broader strategy of using trade policy as a tool for geopolitical leverage. Secretary Bessent has also called on European allies to impose similar sanctions on countries purchasing Russian oil, highlighting a concerted effort to isolate Russia economically. However, the approach risks further complicating international trade relations and could have unintended economic consequences.
Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission has presented testimony against former UK Minister Tulip Siddiq, accusing her of leveraging familial ties to ex-Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to illicitly acquire state-owned land in Dhaka. Siddiq, who resigned in January amid scrutiny over financial links to Hasina, denies all allegations.
Bangladesh's Anti-Corruption Commission has initiated multiple investigations into former UK Minister Tulip Siddiq, alleging her involvement in corruption during her aunt Sheikh Hasina's tenure as Prime Minister. The primary accusation centers on Siddiq's alleged acquisition of a 21,600 square foot plot in Dhaka's diplomatic zone, purportedly obtained through undue influence. Siddiq, alongside her mother Sheikh Rehana and siblings, faces charges in this land grab case, with proceedings continuing in their absence as they remain abroad. Beyond the land acquisition case, Siddiq and her family are implicated in a broader corruption probe concerning the Rupur nuclear power plant project. The ACC alleges that up to $5 billion was embezzled from the $12.65 billion infrastructure deal, with Siddiq's family accused of facilitating the misappropriation of funds. Siddiq was consistently denied any wrongdoing and maintains that the charges are politically motivated. Siddiq's resignation as the UK's Economic Secretary to the Treasury in January of 2025 followed mounting pressure over her financial connections to Sheikh Hasina's regime. Although an ethics advisor found no breach of ministerial code, Siddiq acknowledged the potential reputational risks and chose to step down to avoid distracting from the government's agenda. The UK currently lacks an extradition treaty with Bangladesh, complicating any legal proceedings against Siddiq within the UK.
South Korean President Lee Jae-myung is set to visit Japan on August 23rd for a summit with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. The meeting aims to strengthen bilateral ties, enhance trilateral cooperation with the US, and address regional security issues ahead of Lee's scheduled talks with President Trump on August 25th.
A Korea-Japan summit will take place next week. The presidential office officially announced on Wednesday that President Lee plans to head to Japan for 2 days from August 23rd to meet his Japanese counterpart, Prime Minister Ishiba. This means his visit will take place right ahead of Lee's scheduled meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on August 25th.
We hope Lee's visit strengthens the personal relationship and trust between the two leaders. They are expected to explore ways for future-oriented cooperation between the two countries, along with their trilateral cooperation with the U.S.
The upcoming Lee-Ishiba summit comes after the two leaders agreed to immediately resume regular high-level meetings during the G7 summit held in Canada's Kananaskis in June. The presidential office added regional issues regarding peace and stability, along with other global issues may be discussed. While the exact agenda has yet to be decided on, the office added issues regarding import regulations for fisheries imports could be on the table, with the government raising potential health issues that could affect Koreans. With less than 2 weeks left until the meeting, eyes are on whether this signals a resumption of regular summits between the two countries.
Torrential rains continue to batter South Korea's central region, including Gyeonggi Province and Incheon. Deokdo Island recorded nearly 150 millimeters of rainfall in just 1 hour. Authorities have issued heavy rain warnings, closed streams, and activated emergency measures as flooding and landslides threaten communities.
South Korea continues to see heavy rain throughout the central region, including Gyeonggi Province on Wednesday. Dokjokdo Island of Ongjingun County, Incheon, saw extreme rainfall of nearly 150 millimeters in just 1 hour. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, from 8:14 a.m. till 9:14 a.m. on Wednesday morning, around 149 millimeters of rain poured in the area, marking a near record figure of rainfall. Even areas that didn't cross the 100 millimeter per hour threshold still saw significant rainfall well above typical downpour levels, being classified as heavy rainfall. Around 29 streams in Seoul have been closed off, including Cheonggyecheon and Anyangcheon streams. A heavy rain advisory had been issued in the morning in the northern parts of the city and was later raised to a heavy rain warning in the southwestern areas. Seoul and Gyeonggi Province have activated level 2 of their emergency response measures, while the country's forestry service issued landslide warnings for some cities and counties including Pocheon, Gapyeong, and Yangju. Advisories have been placed in nearby regions as authorities order evacuations in other affected areas as a precaution. The KMA notes that this comes from North Pacific high-pressure air expanding into the peninsula alongside hot and humid air caused by the typhoon Podul. This air combined with the dry air coming down from the north created a narrow rain cloud band. More specifically, fast winds blowing from the lower atmosphere at an altitude of 1.5 kilometers, known as lower jets, have been adding to a large amount of water vapor and torrential rain. As the Interior and Safety Ministry activated Level 1 of the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters response measures, authorities are calling on strict management and preemptive closure of flood-prone areas to prevent further damage. Though heavy rain is expected to continue throughout Wednesday, it will ease off nationwide by Thursday afternoon, and related agencies will be closely monitoring conditions.
Let's go in for a short commercial break. More world news coming right after this. Welcome back. Israel is reportedly exploring the resettlement of displaced Palestinians from Gaza, engaging with countries including Indonesia, Somaliland, Uganda, South Sudan, and Libya. While some progress has been made with Indonesia and Somaliland, no formal agreements exist. South Sudan has denied involvement, and human rights concerns have been raised internationally.
According to Israel's N12 television, citing sources on Wednesday, Israel has approached Indonesia, Somaliland, Uganda, South Sudan, and Libya to gauge willingness to accept displaced Palestinians from Gaza under plans described by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as voluntary migration. Though no firm agreements have been signed, some progress has reportedly been made with Indonesia and Somaliland. Indonesia previously made a humanitarian offer, including treating up to 2,000 wounded Palestinians earlier this month and temporarily accepting around 1,000 war refugees in April. South Sudan, however, has denied involvement. Its foreign ministry labeled earlier reports of resettlement talks with Israel as baseless and not reflective of its official policy.
At least 26 people have died in a migrant shipwreck off Italy's Lampedusa island, with 60 survivors rescued. The boat carrying nearly 100 individuals from Libya capsized approximately 14 miles from shore. This tragedy highlights the ongoing perilous Mediterranean crossings.
Italian authorities initiated a large-scale rescue operation after an aircraft identified a capsized vessel about 14 miles south of Lampedusa. The Italian Coast Guard deployed 5 ships, 2 aircraft and a helicopter to the scene. Survivors, including 56 men and 4 women, were brought ashore by the Italian Red Cross and the UNHCR. Initial reports suggest the boat carried between 92 and 97 people. The exact number of fatalities remain uncertain as search operations continue. The UNHCR has expressed deep concern over the incident, emphasizing the need for enhanced efforts to prevent such tragedies. The central Mediterranean route remains one of the deadliest migratory paths, with over 675 deaths recorded this year alone. This incident underscores the urgent need for comprehensive migration policies that prioritize humanitarian assistance and safe passage for migrants. While Italy has faced criticism for its handling of migrant arrivals, international cooperation and adherence to human rights standards are essential to address the root causes of such perilous journeys.
French President Emmanuel Macron has formally acknowledged France's role in repressive violence during Cameroon's struggle for independence. In a letter to President Paul Biya, Macron accepted responsibility for the deaths of key independence leaders and pledged to open archives and support historical research to foster reconciliation.
It's a term that has up until now been absent from France's official language. A war in Cameroon. President Emmanuel Macron has acknowledged that France waged one during the African nation's struggle for independence. In the latest example of his presidency's efforts to come to terms with France's colonial past, Macron said in a letter sent to his Cameroonian counterpart Paul Biya, there was a war in Cameroon during which the colonial authorities and the French army carried out repressive violence. It is incumbent on me today to accept France's role and responsibility in these events. The admission follows a report by an official historical commission set up jointly by the two countries in 2022 to shed light on the events leading up to and after Cameroon's independence. It examined France's role there between 1945 and 1971, based on declassified archives, eyewitness accounts and field surveys. In the more than 1,000-page document handed to the presidents of both countries in January, the commission noted,
"The war continued after Cameroon's independence in 1960. France was involved in actions taken by the autocratic and authoritarian regime of Ahmadou Ahidjo and left tens of thousands of victims."
At the time, President Biya had this to say.
Qu'il s'agit en définitive d'un travail de thérapie collective qui amène les peuples à mieux s'accepter et à s'assumer pleinement dans leurs relations.
The Historical Commission is set to continue its work to bring transparency into France's colonial period. Macron's letter, however, did not mention the possibility of reparations.
Peru's President Dina Boluarte has enacted a controversial law granting pardons to military and police officers accused of human rights abuses during the 1980 to 2000 internal conflict. The move, supported by the right-wing Popular Force Party, has faced criticism from human rights organizations and international bodies.
President Dina Boluarte signed a law pardoning military and police officers implicated in human rights violations during Peru's internal conflict between 1980 and 2000 yesterday. The law approved by Congress in July was enacted despite appeals from the Inter-American Court of Human Rights urging Peru to ensure justice for victims. Boluarte defended the decision, stating it recognized the sacrifice of security forces in combating terrorism. The pardon law is expected to halt or overturn more than 600 pending trials and 156 convictions against security officials for abuses committed during clashes with insurgent troops like the Shining Path. Human rights organizations have expressed concern that this move undermines accountability and justice for the victims of the conflict. The law has drawn criticism from human rights organizations and international bodies for potentially ending accountability for crimes tied to a conflict estimated to have caused around 69,000 deaths and disappearances. The measure was supported by the right-wing Popular Force Party founded by late former President Alberto Fujimori, who had also been convicted of rights abuses before being pardoned in 2023. The decision comes amid growing scrutiny of Boluarte, whose popularity has declined significantly following an investigation into protester deaths after she assumed office in 2022.
Time for a short break now. We'll be right back with more world news. Welcome back. Maple, a retired canine detection dog, has embarked on a new mission to protect honeybees. Recruited by Michigan State University's Pollinator Performance Center, the 9-year-old English Springer Spaniel uses her keen sense of smell to detect American fall brood, a deadly bacterial disease threatening bee populations.
What does a law enforcement canine do after retirement? For Maple, she got another job, but one that typically is only for the bravest of humans. She's a beekeeper of sorts, using her strong sense of smell to sniff out disease among honeybee colonies.
The idea with the dogs is that they can work as a screening tool. So we have beekeepers that have, 5,000, 10,000 colonies, and it's very hard to go through them with enough rigor to actually see all of the disease.
Maple was recruited by Michigan State University to detect a disease called American foul brood. Scientists say it's one of the main contributors to the decline in honeybees. Maple's handler says she's thrilled that even at 9 years old, her dog is still serving her community.
I was over the moon excited because my dog would still have joy in her life and would still be able to work.
Since bees pollinate a good portion of the food we eat, she's protecting a vital part of our ecosystem.
Griffith University has begun the world's first human trial using nasal cells to treat spinal cord injuries. The procedure transplants olfactory cells to regenerate damaged nerves, combined with intensive rehabilitation. Led by Professor James St. John, the study aims to restore nerve function and improve patient mobility.
It's an emotional milestone for Perry Cross.
I have worked all my life for this moment, to start a human clinical trial.
A quadriplegic since breaking his neck in a rugby tackle at age 19.
I'm basically 95% paralysed. I can't even breathe on my own.
He's spent the last 30 years being a tireless advocate for Australia's 20,000 spinal cord patients. The Perry Cross Foundation now helping fund a world-first human trial in Queensland, using cells from a patient's own nose in transplantation therapy.
Specialised cells that have many different characteristics that are useful for repairing injuries of the nervous system.
The nasal cells are removed, then treated to form nerve bridges before being implanted into the spinal cord injury. Then the cells get to work, helping repair the damage.
We don't know which injury is going to respond. It might be they can breathe on their own, they might be able to move a finger.
But patients like Perry Cross have high hopes for this groundbreaking treatment that's been almost a decade in the making.
There's hope that people with spinal cord injury injured today will one day recover, and that was never possible.
And with that, we come to the end of today's edition of World News Tonight. With the hopes of seeing you again, I'm Prithika Sivakumar, and we'll leave you tonight with the visuals of a hot air balloon offering a stunning Serengeti migration view. Also, don't forget to send us your feedback through email at feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or via WhatsApp at 076-805-7933. Anuradhi Vikramasinghe will be joining you next with the Nightly Business Report. Thank you for watching. Have a great night.